Welcome to the Army Breakout session. I'm Chaplain Colby, and I've been asked to facilitate this time together. I'm excited that we have all of you here and that we have our speakers with us. Just as a way of introduction, I work at Forces Command, and I am Chief of the Center for Strategic Spiritual Studies, which addresses many of those things that Chaplain Bailey has just addressed with us, looking in the future. Most of my life is spent looking 10, 20 years down the road and figuring out how are we going to provide religious support 10 to 20 years from now. So it's exciting, it's challenging, it can be a bit overwhelming. One of the things that we've noticed in our research at this point is that there seems to be a disconnect between commanders and their chaplains. Between chaplains and their commanders. And so our breakout session today is primarily looking at that and trying to create a stronger bridge. We'll be starting out today from hearing from Colonel Derek Tolman. He's representing the commanders that each of us have. He served on active duty with the Utah National Guard for over 25 years. He's commanded at the company, battalion, and brigade levels, including commander of the Utah National Guard Counter-Drug Task Force, commander of the 300th Military Intelligence Linguistic Brigade, and commander of the 142nd Military Intelligence Battalion, Linguist Battalion. He mobilized in support of the 2002 Winter Olympic Games and to Louisiana following the aftermath of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. He has deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan. He's married to the former Carolyn Hammond, and they reside in South Jordan, Utah, with their 5 children. So, please come join us.
Thanks, Chaplain. Well, it's good to be with you today. I'm a poor substitute for Major General Jefferson Burton, the Adjutant General of Utah, who was scheduled to be here but had some other commitments that he had to meet. But he sends his appreciation to you for all that you do. I'm grateful to stand in his place today and just share a few remarks from a commander's perspective. After hearing Dr. Schmidt's wonderful address this morning, I can assure you the prayer in my heart right now is, Lord, please make what you can of this mess. But I do want to draw on my experience with chaplains. I had the great privilege of serving with 3 wonderful chaplains, great chaplains, as both a battalion and a brigade commander. 2 of those 3 are here today, and I owe them a lot. I've learned volumes from them and from others that I see here that I'm well acquainted with. I want to begin by just sharing a few remarks of my experience as a battalion commander in Afghanistan. We were a military intelligence unit that was the theater intel battalion that would serve on upwards of 25 different forward operating bases in eastern and southern Afghanistan. As many of you, as you all know, we get notice months before it's time to deploy, and I remember 7-8 months before we were to deploy, I was, as the commander, experiencing a lot of sleepless nights already, experiencing a tremendous amount of anxiety as I thought about the welfare of my soldiers in that environment, the welfare of our families back here at home. As I endeavored to get to know every one of my soldiers, their families, that anxiety just increased and increased till it really reached a level of being, unhealthy and really unsustainable for the mission at hand. So I did what you encourage all of our soldiers to do. I leaned on my faith. I leaned on the power of prayer, priesthood blessings, and it helps. And it got me to the point where I could move forward with resiliency in that position. And so we trained and we deployed. And we went out and started to prosecute our mission in Afghanistan. Later in the deployment, when violence was at its peak in Afghanistan, I began to feel a relapse of that unhealthy amount of anxiety. And one night from Afghanistan, I called home to my parents. I was talking to my dad, and I didn't mention anything of what I was going through. You know how it is. You call home, hey, everything's fine out here in Afghanistan. That's the right answer. But surely prompted, my dad kind of shared out of the blue 3 experiences from my family history. You might want to call that family scripture and look at it that way. And one of those stories was about my great-great-grandmother, Mary Jane Gorringe Tolman. She's the only grandparent my dad knew as a child growing up. He describes her as a small, frail lady, but one who had tremendous faith, incredible faith. She passed away at the age of 90. At the time of her funeral, she had 13 children, 108 grandchildren, and 150 great-grandchildren. Wow, that's a lot of minivans. And amazing to me, she had 42 grandsons who served in World War II. So here my great-great-grandmother, her biggest desire before her death was to see all 42 of those grandsons return home. Now you think about that, World War II, and her petition is bring all 42 home safely. That's a lot to ask for that war. But she prayed mightily every day, had great faith, and lived to see all 42 of those grandsons return home safely. What a miracle. Well, that was a story this battalion commander in Afghanistan needed to hear. And it changed me. It brought me comfort. It brought me courage. Prayed differently for my soldiers. Prayed just to have the faith of my great-great-grandmother. Well, our soldiers did a wonderful job, and we were, through the grace of God, able to bring all of them home safely to their families after our deployment. Following the deployment, I remember talking with a Salt Lake Tribune reporter being interviewed, and I remember expressing to him our gratitude for faith and prayers, and that we could bring all of these soldiers home safely. I also remember talking to him about kind of the aftermath of deployment, talking about we brought them all home, but there's still the wounds of war, bruised and broken marriages. Soldiers without employment returning to a very challenging and difficult economy. Soldiers with mental health issues. So I share this with you this morning, this little personal anecdote, for a couple of reasons. First, any commander that takes seriously his stewardship to train and care for his soldiers and their families, he feels the burden of command. No matter how calm and hoo-ah and squared away they look, competent on the outside, I guarantee you that deep in their soul, there's some sense of loneliness. There's some sense of feeling inadequate to the task at hand, to the task of caring for those soldiers and their families. In my own experience, chaplains became a great comfort. Where there was loneliness, chaplain filled the void. Where there was great burden, chaplain helped alleviate that burden. And I hope that you have a vision of that, how much you can do in your capacity as chaplains to ease the burden of command on your commanders. Second reason why I shared this experience was just to illustrate the role of faith in the free exercise of religion on the battlefield and what it means. I attribute our success, I attribute our ability to return our soldiers, all of them, to their families, to the faith and prayers of many, to a great chaplain who ministered to our soldiers who came from, and we're a Utah National Guard unit, but we had more than a dozen soldiers from more than a dozen religious denominations. And to see him work and make sure that they all could practice their religion, and then to see him minister to those who don't proclaim any religion was an amazing thing. And lives were truly saved. Kids who struggled, who contemplated taking their life, lives were saved through the work of a great chaplain. I believe soldiers who are encouraged to practice their religious beliefs, or to at least adhere to principles of truth if they have no religious beliefs, make for great soldiers, and great soldiers can then accomplish the mission at hand. I want to leave you with five quick points that hopefully would inform and instruct on how you can better connect with your commanders and advise your commanders. The first one is educate the commander. Does your commander know? Does your commander know what you can offer him or her? Does your commander understand how vast and important your mission to nurture the living, care for the wounded, and honor the fallen is? And it is. I'm amazed at all that chaplains can do. In my mind and in my experience, I can't imagine a command, whether here in garrison or abroad, that doesn't have the chaplain as a key member of the command team. Number two, get out of the office or get out of the chapel, however that's said. I love the many phone calls, texts, emails that I've received from my chaplains over the years that say something to the effect of, "Sir, not going to be at the brigade today. I'm going to visit a soldier up in Charlie Company. Sir, I'm going out to the training of Bravo Company in the field." I guarantee you that if you'll be quick to the field, quick to be where the soldiers are, get yourself on the training schedule, that it makes a huge difference. I've seen it time and time again. When chaplains are on the training schedule and they're engaging the troops and the troops know them, then the ones that need to come forward, the ones that need help, they come forward in great numbers. But there's a price to be paid to get that. Number three, communicate with the commander. There are things that you know, that only you know about the command as a chaplain. And I've appreciated the advice that I've received as a commander over the years. It shaped my decisions. I know chaplains can't go into matters of confidentiality, but they can tell a commander what's going on with the soldiers, what their needs are. Again, things that he may not ever get from any other source, even in an intel unit. And so, informed commanders make better decisions, and I see the chaplain as someone who's key to informing my decisions as a commander. Number four, be relevant to the current threats. We face an enemy today that has an extremist ideology, one that's hijacked one of the world's great religions. I ask myself, how well do our soldiers really understand that? And do they differentiate the tenets of a peaceful religion from the tenets of an extremist ideology? It's important that they do understand that. Are you one of the subject matter experts on cultural literacy in your organization? What a great resource you could be to the commander to make sure that our soldiers really understand the environment that they're operating in. Our Army's done a pretty good job of putting more emphasis on that, but it's still kind of that box to be checked at the MOB station before you go out. And a chaplain can be one who can really make sure that is trained properly with our soldiers, and what a difference it makes for them to accomplish their mission and do so appropriately in the cultures and in countries that they serve in. Lastly, be a champion of Army values and moral living. How often does the Book of Mormon and other works of Scripture discuss God's covenant that this land, that He'll prosper this land, that this land will be a land of liberty, be protected from its enemies if we'll just but keep the Lord's commandments, live moral lives. Do good. What of our oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic? How many of our founding fathers said that our Constitution is for a moral and religious people? What of the trust that we need to maintain as a military with the American people? The Gallup poll has tracked trust with the American people between American institutions and the American people. The military still stands as the most trusted institution in America. Is that increasing that trust? Is it eroding? And what role do you play as a chaplain to ensure that, especially as Chaplain Bailey pointed out, to reach the 98% who aren't coming to chapel, who don't profess any religion at all? How will they learn the moral values that are important to sustaining our Constitution? Chaplain Bailey also talked about the transformation of our military. It's an important debate, the size, the capabilities that we'll have, certainly. But this much I do know, however that ends, the size and might of our military will matter very little if we fail to hold fast to those core values that have made this country great. And so I hope that you have a vision of your role in ensuring that those moral values are taught and maintained within the command climate of your respective commands. Well, these are some simple truths. I think that we're successful when we follow the simple truths, and I hope that you've gained a few things here today and throughout this conference. The one thing I will leave with you is this. As you try to kind of crack the code with your commander and connect with him appropriately and ensure that he is fully utilizing the capabilities that you bring, I thought about, well, what's the silver bullet? What is it that needs to happen to make that happen? What's the one thing I could tell them? And I think you're going to learn a lot of things here this week. We already have. We've been well fed this morning. But for me, it comes down to this one thing. There is no easy answer. It will come on bended knee as you seek to be prompted by the Spirit on what you need to do to make that appropriate connection with your commander. There's so many different commanders out there. And the good Lord will have to guide you in what you need to do to make that connection. So my prayer is that the Spirit will guide you in your stewardship, and I again appreciate all that you do for our military and for our military families. And I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much, sir, for spending time with us. We hope that you'll be able to remain with us and perhaps answer some questions at the conclusion of our next speaker, if that's possible. That means the challenge, some questions about how we can better serve our commanders and make that bridge strong between us and commanders. Well, we have heard from Chaplain Bailey just in the last hour. We're going to invite him back up again to address the theme of strengthening the relationships between chaplains and their commanders. I know, maybe it's just a blinding flash of the obvious, that we are very relational in the chaplaincy. First couple days of this weekend, we strengthened our relationship with our Heavenly Father and with our Savior Jesus Christ, the many sermons that were given. Then again, there's the relationships we have with our family. With those core relationships in strong and holding fast, then we can begin to reach out to others and build those relationships. The relationships with our chaplain assistants, very important. With other chaplains, with our commanders, of course, and our supervisory chaplains. It's all about relationships, and there's nothing better when those relationships are healthy and vibrant. Those are good days. When there are fractures, that's when we know that we need to do some work and mending. So with those thoughts in mind, I would simply like to invite Chaplain Bailey to come forward. We've given him a list of the questions that we asked from the field that you have submitted. And the time is yours, sir, just to use as you feel inspired. And I'm very grateful to have you here.
Well, you thought you were off the hook. Now I'm back up here. Sorry about that. I'm gonna grab some water here, keep my throat lubricated here. This is not a prepared speech of any sort. I just want to be a resource to you, okay? So, as indicated after we talk, and for both of us here as speakers, get your questions ready, make them hard as you can, and there's no such thing as a dumb question. Because everybody around you wants to ask the same question, they just don't have the guts to ask it, so go ahead and do it. So there you go. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to just be very informal here, and I'm going to, you've seen my bio, you've seen my experiences, and I'll let that be read as it is, and things of this nature, but I've been given 8 questions that you prepared that you'd like me to mention. So what I'm going to do is go down that list, if that's okay with you. Let's just get to the point, right? Quit messing around. We got lunch waiting, let's get going. All right. So, and then, of course, anything you want to elaborate on and discuss further, we can, of course, in this stuff, and anything beyond this. So the first question was asked, and part of this is going to be addressing the advising commander issues here from my perspective. What are some of the challenges facing chaplaincy in the next 5 to 10 years? You've already heard a little bit of what I've talked about, but I'll get a little more specifics. One of the major things that we're concerned about is the high demand and low density faith groups, like, for example, Roman Catholic priest, things of this nature. And some of the high sacramental churches, like the Episcopal, the Lutheran, Methodist, and more Anglican side of fence like that, we're having a very big shortage in that. Now, why are we having shortages? And the shortages are because that there's a shortage inside the civilian sector as well. So it's hard to recruit when you have shortages already out there, because the church leaders of those faith groups don't want to let them go into the military because they're having parish issues out there, if you will. So we have a really large gap and a growing gap. And the second reason we have a gap is because the demographics and the change of the religious culture of our country has changed. There are less and less, the larger churches are growing in smaller numbers, and the more free churches are growing, because of the younger population is going toward less of a formal organizational type church environment, or they're just not going at all. And because of that, there's a decline in our American society of church membership. When you have a decline of church membership, then there's a decline of clergy available. And the third reason, and why there's a decline of clergy to recruit in these churches, is that, and I'll try to say this politically correct if I can, is that there are less and less people who want to be clergy. It's not a high lucrative job. It's long hours, high sacrifice, and there's a deep calling to have to go with that. Well, today's young people are just not going in a majority to that sacrificial type of calling, or that job, if you will, whatever it may be. They want to go into electronics, into creating games, and if you look at the profile of millennials, they will have, within the first 10 years, 3 to 5 jobs. They like to hop around, create and investigate, have experiences of the wide world, and enjoy, not thinking about the long term necessarily. So how do you get one of those flies buzzing in the air and trying to capture it to choose to be a clergy? It's kind of tough, because they don't have that value unless they come from a background like that. And the pool to draw from that's getting smaller. So that's one of the main, and I kind of elaborate a little more than I should have, but that's one. Not going into what I've already mentioned earlier today, here's some other things that's challenging for the future for us. In the Army, and I can get more of an Army now for you, because you're one of the brethren now, okay? So I can talk to you now. We can slam the other services now, no big deal. Okay. It's called RAF. You ever heard of RAF? okay, most of you have not. You better learn the acronym. It's your world. Regionally Aligned Forces is RAF. Now you use the word RAF. Regional Aligned Forces is the way we're going to fight these days. Now, what does that mean? I'm not trying to get into an operational class here, but you better read up on it. RAF is where we will go, and let's say the Pacific, which is the pivot point, and they need the commander of the theater there, the COCOM commander, which is naval, says, I need Army personnel, and he chooses from a menu, I need this many MPs, this many communication, this many engineers, where it may be. Gone is the era in which they said, I need a BCT, brigade, because he doesn't need all the extra there. That he wants to go and build something. He needs security, he needs engineers, he needs some communication people, but he doesn't need a brigade, nothing but engineers. He needs a little this, a little that to form a brigade size element to go to this one place to help an issue. So you draw from various units. So now you'll have a variety of soldiers, if you will, and other services too, possibly, and civilians, coming together for a specific mission. Regionally aligned forces. That's what I'm defining for you here. So here's your scenario. Here's the challenge. You're let's say an infantry brigade or a battalion. A squad, a platoon, or at the most a company is requested, sent, deployed to the Philippines. How do you cover them? The headquarters is not going. They're going to be assigned somewhere else. And this is not an oddity. This is a norm. A squad goes off. How do you ensure their religious needs are met? So we have a plan. We're going to train you on this, of how to do this. We'll draw from the special operations field, who do this all the time, and apply it to the main Army side of the fence. So how would you support them before they deploy? And then a possibility would be the brigade or battalion headquarters would deploy, pardon me, they only go to the Hawaii and stage there while the rest of the unit goes forward. So what do you do now for religious coverage? How do you ensure they get their sacramental rights met? Your commander will look at your face and say, what's your plan, chaplain? Regionally aligned forces. Or worse yet, they're going to 3 different theaters in the world simultaneously. So your whole unit split up. So where do you go to cover them? So we have to work, that's a challenge. The second one's called megacities. This is a new term for you. It's the latest thing that's come out of the Pentagon. It may not be new for some of you, but it is a major, major discussion in the Pentagon right now, is megacity missions. There are about 6 to 8, I heard, megacities in the world, which is like a couple of million or bigger. Now, it's going to grow and double within the next 5 years, megacities. Because people are going to the urban environment, and so you would have a city here and a city there, and pretty soon they're just combined, like Dallas and Fort Worth are now one big city called megacity. You deploy there. Now the mission has changed. You're not in a tank battle. You're not in an urban battle of lots of space around you. You're in the middle of a major city. So what are you going to do about it? That's a major challenge for us. How do you lessen casualties of the civilian populace? They're facing that in Israel right now, and over in the discussion over there and the fighting they're going on there about hiding behind, even ISIS is hiding behind the populace right now. So how do you fight that? And as a religious expert on your side, how do you deal with that side? The third one, a challenge, and I'll finish this off real fast here, I already talked about is family structures. I'll leave that alone. And then the last one is capabilities needed. We don't know what kind of chaplains we need in total, but we're going to have to get more technically efficient in certain capabilities that you need to acquire. I'll come more about that in a moment. And the last thing I'll mention before I go to this, and that's number 1 and 2 questions you asked, by the way. And the last thing I'm facing is, do we need chaplain assistants? Do we need directors of religious education anymore in the Army? Now, I'm not saying we don't need them. I'm asking an open question. We'll always need chaplains because we bring the sacrament. We bring things that only we can do. But what about these supporting things around us in the Army? What should a chaplain assistant look like? Do we need them? Or we need something like them? Is a discussion we're having right now. The directors of religious education, which are assigned to different areas, for some of y'all who know about those, are under scrutiny right now and are declining in size, in numbers. The assistants are now under the eye to being taken out of the Army structure. That's my world that I deal with. But how can I fight to keep them if they're not relevant, is my question. So that's a challenge for us. So the first two questions are, what are some of the challenges? And the second is, what is your vision for the future chaplaincy? And how can we, ways we could, our core capabilities change for the next decade? And I'll finish up answering that second question. I already kind of answered it already a little bit. I would offer to you and suggest to you strongly, I'll give you a vignette real fast to give you an example of what I'm going to say. Last week, a major, brand new lieutenant colonel chaplain got a hold of me on an email. He said, "Sir, would you mentor me some?" Well, that takes a lot of time, so I can't shortchange him because he needs mentoring and he deserves it. But I said, sure, okay, I can for now. I can't do it very long, but I can for now because I'm so busy you can't depend on me. And so he asked me a question. He said, "Sir, I like to preach. I love to counsel. I love to pastor. What does that mean in my career?" And I said back to him, I said, well, number one is, you're like every other chaplain, number one. We all like to do that. We all come from that backdrop. And we all think that we're Billy Grahams. We all think we are. So if I can use him as an example. So I said, however, if you want to just preach, pray, and counsel, civilians do that. That's all they do. I said, so if you don't remain in the military, you've just capped yourself in your career progression. Because we have plenty of pastors. We have very few pastor managers. We have very few experts in religious cultural aspects. We have very few who are ethicists, who are world religion experts, who are those who do hospital ministries, CPE, and family life ministries, which are technical capabilities that are growing and growing in their need. I said, but we need those who have great homiletical skills and can counsel well, which is, we all need those skills. But at the same time, there's only a few slots of those who be able to say that's all they do. Because at some point you quit doing it. Now you manage it and you resource it and you lead it, but you don't do it necessarily. I'll give me an example. I preach on Sundays very rarely. I haven't for a long time. If you heard me preach, you'd understand, but I don't go in that road either. But I have preached very little. I do very little counseling. I haven't done it for a long time. I still do it off and on, but not in a consistent way. I don't have a door open, people come in, we don't have to get her and line up and say, my wife doesn't love me anymore type stuff. I just don't do that. I quit doing that years ago. My job now is to manage you. My job is to train you to do those things. So my ministry has evolved and changed as I've climbed the ladder. So my speaking is moments like this. And so far there's been no text, there's no offering place, there's nothing that resembles a worship service. But I do prayer breakfasts a lot. But that's about all I do. Because that's not where God wants me right now to do. Job is to manage, empower, and to do policy for the whole Army, for the chaplain religious support. Now, I say that not in a grandiose way, but preach, pray, and counsel, where did that stop in my progression? So you got to think about these in your own calling and stuff like that, of what you want to do. So I'd say the direction the Corps is going to go is it will always have that basic core need of preach, pray, and counsel. If I can use that as a kind of a catch-all, if I can, a pastoring, if you want. But beyond that, we need technicians. We need experts and focused capabilities and gifts beyond that. That makes you more competitive. It makes you more needed in the military. Because now, as has been indicated already, we need people who can do that, But as you go along, we need people who also can do those specialized skills. And the Army is looking for specialized skills. So, just for what it's worth. Okay, number 3. What are some of your personal experiences in advising your commander? They will not listen. Oh, no, I'm just joking. I'm joking. I'll tell you my experiences. Here's what I've learned. And I won't bounce off. He said it beautifully. And I'm so echo it. Do your homework for advising. Here's what I hear from junior chaplains a lot. And I pulled this trick a few times, and then I quit doing it because it just wasn't right. But we still do it. We'll have 2 people come to see us with marriage problems in a week. And we run to our commander and says, there's a marriage crisis in our unit. We have a trend going. It's unbelievable. The marriages are falling apart, sir. I need money and I need programs for you to support to take care of this marriage crisis. If you ever asked how many, you'd be stuck, wouldn't you? Well, actually, there were only 2, and one lied to me. So do your homework. If you're going to advise commander, give him or her quality information that you have carefully looked at, you've analyzed, and you have seen that it actually is something that is very relevant to the health of your unit. Don't waste their time with sloppy, unprofessional advice. I'm going to give you some examples of that in a minute. Timing. You don't waltz into a commander's office when you got this great inspirational moment. They are the boss. You work for your commander. I've been asked this question. Here's my answer. Chaplain, who's the customer? And the chaplains, invariably, most of them say, well, it's a soldier. And the answer is, no, they're not the customer. The commander's our customer. The commander's customer is the soldier. The soldier recipients of our profession, of our calling, of our capabilities, but the commander's our customer because we work for the commander. It is his program, not ours. We sometimes get that backwards, saying, well, do we want to do and inform the commander after we've done it? And that's the wrong answer. Then we want him the resources. We've got the horse and the cart backwards a little bit here. If you know you've got that perspective of how the Army runs and work for the commander, I'm telling you guys, I have changed a long time ago in that perspective. It has been nothing but profitable and it has been nothing but success when I finally got the clue. And I'm telling you what it is. Get out of your minds that you're here to do what you want with you and God, and the commander is just a side note, or the Army is just a platform to do what you want to do. If that's the case, thank you for your service, because you will have a limited career. Commanders will not want to talk to you because you don't care about telling them how their unit is and what to do to fix it. And let him or her make that decision, not you. They will not tell you what to preach on Sunday mornings, but the rest of the time is their time. Okay? I'm being very strong about this. This is where I see a lot of failure in this sense. So timing. When you walk into a commander's office, understand when his busy time is. Sir, I need 5 minutes. There's no such thing as 5 minutes. Biggest lie in the world. You already know that. When a soldier says, sir, you got 5 minutes, we'll tell you a problem. You can't tell a problem in 5 minutes. That usually means a half hour at least. Be respectful of the commander. Understand his time. Time it right when you've got his ear. When he wants to listen to you. Be courteous to him and his timing. He's got everybody else who wants 5 minutes of his time. And you know how many 5 minutes are in an hour in a day? Only so much. Okay? So, understand that. I'll give an example. Here's some examples of how you can do it and be successful, okay? As I've climbed to my level, I've learned, and I started using this when I was, I had 3 brigades. So about the 3rd brigade, I started doing it better. By the time I got a division, I got it down to an art. And from then on, it's been this way. It's been worked out every time. And please correct me if this works for you. Please, I like that feedback. For example, the commander doesn't know, usually he doesn't have fixed time unless the commander decides, which is very, very profitable, saying, Chaplain, I want you on my calendar 30 minutes per week or an hour a month or whatever it may be. And he sets that time for you to come in, and there's your time with him. And it could be a time of prayer plus conversation and wherever it may be. He may set that. I have very few commanders who've done that. And I've heard they do it, though, and it's a wonderful thing if they do, but don't depend on it. So here's what I've done. One is, along the way is, I would go run with the commander on PT. Great time to talk, if you can keep your breath. Before and after, he's relaxed, he's on his own, he feels good, he's rejuvenated, his ears are open, he's got his companion, his shepherd with him, and away you go. Before you go, you talk. Afterward, he's breathing heavy, he feels good. Now he wants to talk to you. Great moments like that. Take him out to lunch. Just give him time and take him away from the environment where he can be himself and relax and not be pounded, unless he sets the time. A third way, and I recommend this strongly, along with everything I said, and I can give you examples of this, but it's easy to do. It's a one page, okay? You take a page like this, and on top of the page, you put update. And you can do this on a weekly or quarterly or monthly way. I did mine on a monthly or quarterly way because you can't put that much in a week or a month. You got to kind of get more information. Update, chaplain's update, your point of contact, your name and number at the bottom or top, whichever you want to do, whatever his format he likes. And then bullets, nothing but bullets, like this, for example. And on this, but I had this way, but do bullets. You can say, like, if you're a brigade or above, you say personnel. So we got 2 new chaplains coming in. These are the faith groups. They're married, unmarried, whatever it may be. No issues. Next bullet. So we have counseling trends. I've got from my battalion chaplain division where it may be. Here are some issues. Quick bullets, okay? And then at the very bottom, if you've got any issues you brought up, sir, at the bottom you put down in there saying courses of action or mitigation. I use the word mitigation as a military term. Mitigation issues down here, and list the things that you're doing to mitigate those issues. Don't hand him a mess of religious support. Give him some answers along with it, okay? Now give that one page. I'm very serious. One page, bullets, and send it to him on a habitual way. He will then contact you if he needs more information, but he is informed. And it's an easy read on his part. While he's driving in his Humvee, he's going home at night, it's a one page, he sees it, whatever. I give him a vignette, I could go on and on, I gotta watch out, so you have time for Q&A. I'm a theater chaplain in Europe, okay? I've got, I don't know how many chaplains, I lost track. I had a gob, let's put it that way. Of every flavor you can think of. I had a 4-star general I served. And at that time, I sent him those updates. Now, I initiated it. I said, my first one I sent, I said, sir, this is a format I like to do. You don't have time to see me a lot. I did this for division commander as well. Is this okay to give you updated? Every commander said, yeah, I love it. Because it's courteous, it's professional. So one day, I put up there that there's some issues with NCOs. That I think the NCOs need better training on how to deal with human relationships because they're not very good at it because they've been to war and they've never been trained, been promoted too early, whatever it may be. And I had a little deal there and a mitigation to go with it. I click, send. Probably 15 minutes, the phone rings. I'm in Heidelberg, Germany at the time where my office is across the compound from the commander. And the phone rings and says, this is Mrs. Smith, or whatever her name was, and she's a personal secretary for the CG, said, General Ham, I don't know if you know his name, he just retired as a 4-star, as AFRICOM commander. He was my commander. Smart guy. And so, if your calendar allows, General Ham would like to talk to you about what you just sent him. If my calendar allowed. A 4-star general, it just cleared. I have nothing on my calendar as automatically. I said, anytime. He goes, well, can you be up here in an hour? I can be there in 5 minutes, but yes, an hour's fine. So I'm up there. I go to this huge, his office is big as this room, and I go in there, and he's there. And he said, and the sergeant major of Europe is there too. He said, chaplain, close the door. he sat down, and I won't go into it because it's really a neat experience. But make a long story short, he sat down and he looked at me with that intense look of a guy that can understand Einstein's theory and I can't, and said, now, and he pointed his finger at me in a very strong voice. What do you mean about what you said about NCOs? Now, what does that mean? That worries me. Now, did I do my homework? Did I know what I sent him? Did I have the facts behind it in an opinion that was professional? Or did I throw it out there just to get his attention and sound important? I had my act together, didn't I? So a 4-star general, you don't screw around. Or anybody for that matter, even if it's a lieutenant colonel, or above, you don't mess around, they're commanders. And I said, yes, sir. With bold passion and whatever. Boom, 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 boom. He goes, huh. And then a big task. Sergeant Major, is that right? Now here's my moment. And Sergeant Major said, sir, he's stupid. He's wrong. I'm in my career. I wouldn't be here today. Luckily, Sergeant Major, who I kept informed, and I'll get to that moment. By the way, I'll say that right now. Anything you send to the commander, unless it's privileged, goes to the XO and it goes to the command sergeant major. They all get the same thing. That way, no one is ambushed on what you say. And they will join in and help you convince the commander. So make sure you do that. I forgot to mention that earlier. And then he said, yes, sir. Chat buddies all over it. It's about time someone said something about it. Now it became a 30-minute meeting, became 2.5 hours of discussion. From my comments, he turned to the command sergeant major and says, change all the NCO training in Europe now, to echo this. That's what happens when you know your business and you do your homework and you understand and you believe what you just did. Then you have credibility and they'll believe you. But you better know your business because you just changed people's lives in a flash. An example of that for you. Okay, didn't happen every day, but I'll share that with you. All right, 4th question. How do you recommend chaplains prepare for initial and subsequent performance counseling with commanders and supervisory chaplains? I give you a first thought. Assess yourself first before you get assessed by somebody else. Take your support form, then take your OER and rate yourself. Be honest with yourself. Are you really doing everything? Before you have somebody else to tell your job, you tell yourself what your job is. Assess yourself. Then take that information and be humble enough to accept critical communication and corrective action from a senior. And I tell you, guys, that's the biggest problem with us chaplains. Because we're called by God, only God can tell us what to do, and then we have somebody else, of another faith even, telling us what to do. And we don't like that. Chaplains are professional, autonomous, prima donnas, and are self-righteous. That's us. And we're good at it. We're told that we're good. But you got to be humble enough to accept someone else who observes something that you're blind to. And humble enough to know that God is using them to talk to you. And you don't know everything. I thought I did at one time. A long time ago, I found out I didn't. So listen to those and be open to it. So get that counseling and constantly ask, how did I do? How did I do? Bounce things off your supervisor. Bounce things off your commander. Let him or her give you feedback. And I'll tell you another great one to talk to is the sergeant majors. You talk about honesty. They'll stomp on your toes and grind them in the ground. Not a problem. They're not humble. They'll tell you truth. So ask the sergeant major, Sergeant Major, how am I doing with the soldiers and families? And he or she will tell you. In that you ask them makes them already your friend, or at least someone that respects you, because you're humble enough to ask. I'll give you another little tidbit, something that worked for me. At a brigade and battalion level, take your sergeant majors to lunch one day, as an example. Breakfast, whatever. Take them out. Here's what I did one time when I was my second battalion I ever served in. And it just came to me. The Lord spoke, I guess, and I listened finally. And I went, the command sergeant major said, Sergeant Major, I want to take all the first sergeants out to lunch. Okay, why? we're going to do to them, chaplain? You know, that kind of suspicion. I want to listen to them. And we had a conversation, he and I. He loved the idea, which means that they now will come because he liked it. Went to the club. I bought them lunch. Now, I don't say spend your money. They can buy their own. I just did it myself this one time. My wife let me anyway. And I bought them lunch, and I took a notebook, and I laid it open, and I said, here's what I'm here for. I need to find out how I can better take care of our soldiers and families. I know what I need to do in a lot of ways, but I don't know everything. And I may miss the mark. First sergeants, what can I do to do better? And I stopped. I put my pen up, looked at them, and say, I'm ready to copy. Once they started, the first guy, who's always the jump starter, no matter what, in every group, it was nonstop flow. I filled pages of ideas I never thought about. And because of that, from that day on, I could not keep up with the invitations by the first sergeants to come and meet with their soldiers. I was offered training time. I was offered time to walk with them and run with them and do stuff like that because I was one of the people that helped the first sergeants and helped the soldiers in downground. A great technique. I couldn't keep up with it. And they referred counseling to me. I couldn't counsel fast enough. Every time someone had hiccups, see the chaplain. He loved chaplain. Well, he'll take care of you. Blah, blah. Anyway, okay, move on. Have you a sense of how the new OER is impacting us? It's all been positive. I do a lot of ratings. You can imagine how many I do for senior chaplains. This new system has really got us away from all the verbiage and down to just what we need to hear about. I think it's really important. It makes us chaplains less motor mouth and get down exactly what this chaplain is doing well on. It helps commanders to really say what we're all about. So from our perspective, it has helped us tremendously in a sense. I'll just let go at that. What advice do you give chaplains to explore where the gifts and talents fit best in the chaplaincy? I think I've already mentioned that quite a bit already, in a sense. But look for ways that you can grow. Look for ways that you can advance beyond what you think only you can do best. Allow God to explore with you a little bit and grow you and stretch you a little bit. See what opportunities are out there. Find out how you can be credentialized in certain other things where it may be. Look for ways to be more technically proficient and that you have a menu now in your file that says you can do all these things. Now that gives me an opportunity of how to assign you, of what to do with you, and who has potential for other schoolings. I don't know what I don't know. If everybody here wants to do is to preach, I've only got so many places to preach. As I told one commander, every pine tree and mesquite tree is a steeple. So that's not an issue. Preach all you want. But I need other specialists. So look for ways you can do that. What advice do you give chaplains when they explore their gifts? Let's see. What are some things that you have done to minister to your family as you served in the chaplaincy? First of all, I have a date night with my wife. I have a time where she and I go out, and she knows it, that she's the priority that night, despite things that may happen, deployments, where it may be, in time where they do something. But we have a date night where I take her and I'm treating her like I did when I was dating with her. And it's her night with me, not with the kids only, but just with her. So that's something that I've done. Go to every sporting event I can with the kids. I do things like that, get involved where it may be. And it's all stuff you already know about. And balancing the family. But here's the other thing I've done to minister to her, but it's kind of an odd thing I'm going to tell you in a minute. Because of my ministry, because of who I am, the way I do business in chaplaincy, we have sat down and talked about if something happened to me. We've sat down and discussed where I want to be buried. We've sat down and discussed where would she go, what would she do, how would she take care of the kids. We've had a very hard discussion about that. And I'll say this because I don't share this very often, but I think you need to know it. On 2 occasions, in a theater, I have called her to say goodbye because I was told I would be a casualty. Have you ever had a conversation on the phone with your wife knowing it's the last time you'll ever hear her voice and your children's voice? That's reality. That's sobering. That'll kick your guts. All of a sudden, your ministry and your faith has to really come to a point. Do I just scream and holler and cry and whine and run home because I don't want to lose them? Or do I look at my soldiers and say, they're going to battle, I'm going with them because that's where God wants me. But you have the guts and care and love your family to be honest with them about the reality of your life, of who you are. And that's not, it's not easy to do in that sense. But I put that out there as sharing just a moment there with you. What are some things, have you sought a lifelong learning, this is the last question, to increase your capabilities as a chaplain? I said this the other day in a group mentoring time that Chaplain Helms was part of up in Washington. He's stuck with me once a month, by the way, listening to me pontificate, so you guys are getting off easy. He's stuck every month. So, anyway, I'm going to say it and wrap it in one big burst here. Keep your hunger and appetite to learn. Keep it. Never lose it to want to know more. And I say that and you say, well, duh. You have no idea how many chaplains who say, I've read this and this, I understand this, I believe in this, and that's where I'll stop. Grow your mind, your parameters, your horizon, and get it out there and read everything you can about what your army is all about. I just mentioned wrath. You should be running and looking at something for wrath to understand it, because it's your army that you're caring about, and they're going to be doing it. So how do you apply religious support unless you understand it? How do you know about what's changing? How can you advance your thought process, how to be a better manager of chaplains, unless you read about stuff that no one gives you and spoon feeds you? Now, Chaplain Helms knows this, and a few other ones know this about me as well. I have an unsatisfying appetite for reading and to look at stuff. I've got an unbelievable amount of books that I'm always reading all the time. I brought one with me. I got two of them with me that I read at nighttime. Every chance I get. On an airplane ride, that's what I do. I don't play games, I read to try to catch up with the rest of the world, what's going on. It has become so profitable for me to understand. So when I sit with my commander and talk with my commander, I understand the issues he's facing. And then I can talk religious support to him with authenticity and understanding of how it fits into his world. If I understand the intel world, if I understand the intel what the tomorrow brings that he's got to face, then I cannot be his advisor very well because I don't understand his world. He's got to come to my chapel to understand because that's my world. That's the wrong answer. I work for him. Does that make sense to y'all? So you've got to learn. Now, if you want to know what to learn, I could send you something if you want it. A question was asked to me a while back. Chamberlain, you read everything. You think you know everything anyway. And you got all this knowledge of strategy and whatever it may be. What are some things as a chaplain that I need to know and I need to read? Where can I find this stuff out? Well, I got these questions I don't know how many times. Finally, I just said, okay, enough. So I sat down and I said from first lieutenant to captain, all the way up to colonel to GO level, in every department, I said, here's what you should be knowing if you want to be relevant in today's Army. Here's what I read. Here's what I think you should read if you want to. It's from my desk only. And I put that out. I think they hand it out at the Chibolic School now at Jackson. I'm told they did. But if you'd like to have a copy of that and all those resources and internet sources that I look at, that I track, then I'd be glad to send that to you. Just let me know. Chem Helms has it. You maybe use him for it. I'll let him hold the barrel on that one. Okay. And that's the last question that you asked me, and I won't go any further than that. And I'll stop there so we can have time for my commander over here and us to answer any of your issues and questions. And I'll let that go with that. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful, sir. Thank you. Sure. Now we're going to have microphones probably left and right so that you can please stand and engage a commander and our senior supervisory chaplain. All right. No, we need to have you recorded.
Chaplain Jeremy Williams from the 16 Cav 1st ID Combat Aviation Brigade. I'm working with a commander who has had a chaplain for 12 months of his 22 months of command due to different transfers and whatnot. His frustration is he wants to have consistency with chaplaincy so that his commanders will feel comfortable sending people to the chaplain. So is there something in place the chaplain corps is looking at to help be more consistent in assignments for units like that where they just keep switching over?
I was hoping you'd say I got that, but you didn't do it. Okay. Well, I don't know the circumstances, and I can't talk to that, why that was happening, in a sense, though I've heard that issue before in other places. It's not a norm, if I can say that. So the question would be asked by the commander, why, if it's not a norm, then why am I getting picked on? As a question I guess the commander would ask, in a sense. There's a lot of times when, in circumstances that, it's hard to explain, it's really complex, but those happen sometime, but back to not the norm, because we have chaplains who are coming in at odd times. The timing's off. And we cannot stabilize someone in one spot, but we can at least fill it for a little bit because we have a bubble in the system a little bit. Or someone's getting ready to go to school, and we have no other chaplain, but there's one chaplain for a year before they go to school. So we put them in through that en route to a school, because at least we have coverage for that period of time. We do that a lot. And it's because we have such a low density of chaplains, we don't have any extra to do that, and so we have to. Now, in the sense that if that unit is asking that, the commander needs to raise that up to us, and we'll have our personnel call him directly and discuss that issue with him and explain what's going on. And then we will highlight that to make sure the timing's better, because that happened. There's so many units out there, sometimes it just happens and it's not fair, and we're at fault for that because we weren't knowledgeable of it. We just put someone through at that level. Because our chaplains coming through the school come through in times when we have not enough in the system, and so we have big gaps. So we do the best we can to shuffle around to get stability a little bit. That's the best I can come up with at this point. And of course, my first thoughts is I could talk to commander going, well, there's something about you, sir, that they don't want to work for, but that's not the answer, of course. I'm just laughing with him on that. But that he deserves a chaplain that's stable. I agree with that in a sense. But we don't try to do that intentionally. It's circumstances that create that. Just to give him a chaplain at all, sometimes all we can do, at least for a temporary bit, until we get stability going through. I'll stay right here.
Sir, Staff Sergeant Josh Cook, a chaplain assistant, California State Military Reserve Troop Command. And my question, in light of your announcement of the role of chaplain assistants, I wanted to stand and make myself relevant now that we're on the chopping block. I'm a chaplain assistant to the only rabbi in California, and enjoy my time in service, sir. But my question was, as you look into the future, what's our relationship with the behavioral health people? It seems to me that everywhere I look, they're staffing up with marriage and family, psychologists, lots of behavioral health people, and the resources in our realm seem to be going down. As you look out 10, 20 years, what's the world going to be like with us and behavioral health trained people?
Okay, good question. I can talk more about how we're going to make the chaplain system more relevant, by the way, if you're interested in that too. It's going to change your world, by the way. Back to your question about mental health. We have never had a better relationship with mental health than we do now. Mental health has requested on numerous occasions, and I'm not trying to say this to downplay it, they have asked for us to co-office with us in the unit area, to have an office with us somewhere in the unit area. They found out that because we are embedded in the unit, our credibility is much higher and we're safe to go to. Of course, naturally, confidentiality brings a lot to the table in that sense. But along with that is because we are every day working and living and breathing with the unit and with soldiers, where mental health is sitting over in an office elsewhere that's assigned to cover everybody as essential, like Army Community Services, finance, things like that, in a sense, and other medical support as well. So our credibility is they come to us first, soldiers do. and our job is to defer them back out to the experts in certain areas of life. So they want to come in and really come into our office, and we have said no to that. By the way, very lovingly and respectfully said no, it would not work. And we gave them the reasons why, is that we're not mental health, we're spiritual health people, and we cannot mix the apples and oranges together. However, we need to help each other out of who needs to hear this individual, or both of us need to hear it at different levels, stuff like that. That is a building block that has never stopped. And right now, from a MedCom perspective, and the Surgeon General's office is 4 doors down from where I am, and I see her every day, all the time, General Horoho. And she's a great lady. And so working with her and the other people like that, they want us to come to all their meetings, to all of their help, in fact, conduct training for them in our perspective of how we can have a hand-in-glove relationship in a sense, but not coexist as one. There's a difference because we have a different perspective of confidentiality and also what we bring to the table with our command. We have a different relationship with our commanders than they do in a sense. But we got to help them to use them with a command and help people get over that stigma of going to mental health. We can really break that open in this sense. So back to 10 and 20 years, I don't see any, they're trying to grow in other aspects, but our job security is not an issue at all. So we can take care of that part. It'll always stay in that side of PTSD and all that junk like that. But the moral aspect, the spiritual, religious aspect will always be in our lane, always. And they know that. And that answers your question. Okay.
You prompted me to at least get up and say something on behalf of the chaplain assistants there. Chaplain Bailey, when you announced that the Army's taken a look at chopping those, I found that very surprising. I think in my observations as a commander, for me it's hard to imagine these chaplains being able to do that 200% that you talked about without a chaplain's assistance. So there's my plug.
Now, I didn't say we're going to chop them. I'm just saying the question is, how can we keep them relevant if the Army wants to take them away? That's what my issue is. I want to protect them. You bet. I agree with you totally.
This is for Chaplain Bailey. I'm Chaplain Dawson at Texas Army National Guard. I actually was supposed to be in Afghanistan this time, right now, but my unit was told to stand down. The difficulty with my unit was, sir, we were told we were going, and then not going, and then going, and then not going, and then not going again. And I understand that happens all over the Army, but how do I help my commanders, battalion commander, company commanders, with that level of anxiety that goes on with the yo-yo? Yeah. And what are we looking at to help mitigate the yo-yo effect going on as we're ramping down now, but other places in the world where we might be going again?
That's a little tough to answer that one. Let's see. I've been to that same series with you, yo-yo effect. And it does a very stressful on the unit, very stressful. I think Commander could probably answer it maybe as good as I can if he wants to. I know as a chaplain, when my unit was going through that issue like that in this sense, we had to have a plan to where it's back and forth business. And at first I had to do two things. One is I kept a very strong sensing session about the health of the command and what that's doing to the health of it. First of all, I had to let him know of what it's doing to the families, things of this nature, to keep him advised of it. So I had a really FRGs, things of this nature, and I got very involved in all that, much more than the norm because of that back and forth business. I mean, that's just stressful as a human nature, no matter what. So I had to give the commander that kind of issue of health of that, what it's doing to it. And the mitigation that I offered the commander was that we've got to have more time to blow that steam off of that stress. So unit days, for example, in which the unit can go out and have a day to celebrate whatever their legacy is of their unit, intelligence or signal, whatever they do, and have a time just for soldiers to de-stress a little bit and keep the optimism up, in a sense. Soldiers have got to, and especially young people, as you know, have got to get that stress out of their lives, or they're going to drink it away, they're going to do other things like that. So how can you do that? Especially with this up and down business, go, not go. That does terrible things on individually as well as to the family structure. So you got to have more times to be able to let that off. So you have to have those events going on. The second thing is through your worship services, of course, little programs that you would have, that you can actually meet that with pointed issues of talking about it out loud. Having time in which the commander can step in front of those soldiers and you be part of that process to have account hall meetings, things of this nature, are all de-stressing moments in a sense, whatever. There's no quick answer to that. It's going to be a constant letting the steam off the kettle, but you got to open it up to let the steam off. Otherwise, it's going to be a thing where when they do deploy, they don't even care anymore. They lost their edge, and that's what the commander's got to keep is the edge, and the morale's got to be up. So how do you get that morale and stay up? By doing different things like that. And I think being the eyes and ears in the command, and FRGs with the commander's wife and what she deals with every day with the spouses, and being part of that system would be the best thing I could come up with, unless I missed the point there.
You know, when you said that, that was very reminiscent of the beginning of the conflicts that were coming out of in Iraq and Afghanistan. All the uncertainty, the unpredictability. We were, in my first deployment, went to Iraq, and you know, it started out as, well, it's just going to be 6 months, and then it was a year, and then it turned into 16 months. Tons of uncertainty, lots of stress on the family, but I think it's important for us to all understand those cycles of conflict and how it kind of works. The beginning and the end always have that uncertainty about them, and that's kind of where we're at. And so I think managing expectations is very, very important. You're probably beyond that at this point, and so you're managing stress, and hopefully can, just as Chaplain Bailey indicated, find productive ways to help the soldiers manage stress and get commanders in front of them to, you know, express empathy for what the families and soldiers are going through.
Thank you. Will you please stand as we pay military tribute to Chaplain Bailey? He needs to go on to his next assignment. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Lord bless y'all. Go brag on Jesus.
Please be seated. Well, this has been good discussion so far, and we want to continue just for a few minutes. I'd like you to take a minute and reflect upon the things that we've heard and what difference is it going to make in your life. Think about that, reflect on it, scribble a little note or two, or circle some of your notes. And then I'd like to hear from a couple of you. Go ahead.
Sir, can I ask one more question before we kill the question and answer?
Yeah, we're not going to kill the question and answers by anything. Here's a microphone coming right up to you.
Sir, Chaplain Croak, I have a question for you regarding the relationship between myself as a battalion chaplain and a battalion commander. I feel like I'm doing well enough at relaying information to my battalion commander, but I'd like your impressions on how I might better show him that I want to be his pastor as well.
Yeah, that's a very important point, because you know, I had the benefit of having a great relationship of trust with my chaplain, especially downrange in that circumstance, because it's the old "who does the commander go to?" You know, when he needs help, and commanders, like everybody else, need that ministry from time to time. And so, you know, again, I think it comes down to you know, I knew Utah National Guard, so I knew my chaplain very, very well going in, and many of you don't have the benefit of that, and so you've got to, you know, figure out how to kind of crack that code. And I think, you know, and get past commanders that may feel that they don't want to expose any of their weaknesses to you. But I think it's just a matter of being persistent, I think, and leaving the door open. I think you're doing well with that, and of course that commander's got to choose to walk through that door and so forth. So, and again, back to the you know, seek the promptings, especially if you sense that commander, you know, needs some help. Then you the good Lord knows his heart, you know, and so I think it's a matter of following those promptings in terms of what you need to do.
I really appreciated the comments that were made about our 56 mics, particularly since I'm in my first assignment without one. I recently PCS'd from a recruiting brigade to Fort Benning, where I'm an ethics instructor at the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. Used to be known as the School of the Americas. So I'm technically an instructor, but my boss has made it very clear that I am his command chaplain. So I really miss having a chaplain assistant. And my feelings are very poignant about the importance of a good, functional, and team-oriented approach to working with a chaplain assistant, because I just came out of an assignment where I did very well. My deputy and I, in the 2 years we were there, both got top blocks both years. We did great work. We're proud of our ministry, but we had zero teamwork in our unit ministry team. His chaplain assistant was a team player. My E6 was not. He filed EO complaints against both of us, accused us of racism. He filed IG complaints against us. He was a total barracks lawyer. Made it very hard for my commander to do anything to him. So he was a liability. And what it did to myself and my family was really depress us and stress us and dragged our team down. However, I want you to know that I've had great chaplain assistants. My first one is now a social worker in the Army and holds my rank. She's a major. I have another previous chaplain assistant who's a drill sergeant, and I'm very proud of her. And I have another chaplain assistant who is a chaplain in the Army Reserve now. He's a captain, and formerly Sergeant Potts. And I credit him for our team getting the hero of the battle at a National Training Center rotation. I give that credit to Sergeant Potts. And I had great Katusas in Korea that I'm really proud of that I served with. However, what I've noticed is with chaplain assistants, and I'm sure they say the same thing about us, brethren, is that it's like Joseph in Egypt. Sometimes you got your 7 years of feast, and sometimes you have your 7 years of famine. And let me tell you what I learned from that experience coming out of my recruiting brigade. And I shared these words with one of you who asked me at a conference session, if you had to do it over again, what's the first thing you'd want to know? And these were 3 magic words: trust, but verify. So with your chaplain assistant, make sure that you're doing your initial counseling, spelling out your clear expectations, and following up regularly. I think the NCOAR counseling form should be your guide, and they should be telling you their good stuff. And sit down with them and share your vision and use their gifts and talents. I tell you, that was an interesting time for me. I wouldn't wish it on any of you, but if you're having any struggles with your chaplain assistant and you want to get along with them, feel free to send me an email. You younger chaplains, I would love to mentor you. And my goal for you would be to work it out, not to get rid of them, but to help them succeed, to embrace them and put your arm around them. That way, you will know that you did everything possible. One of my favorite sayings is an unknown German proverb, a clean conscience is a soft pillow. And so I just encourage you to work well and hard with that chaplain assistant and do everything you can to have a great relationship with them. One thing, this is my last little comment, one thing I remind chaplain assistants about is their insignia is not a cross or tablets or a moon or anything else. It's a pair of hands holding a chapel. And what is the chapel? Well, the chapel is just a building. The chapel is nothing without the chaplain. So, of course, in combat, they hold us and protect us. Being our combatant that protects us is our, I don't like to say bodyguard. Never call a chaplain a bodyguard. They are your force protection. They love those words, force protection. And but in peacetime in garrison, what are they doing for you? Well, I let my chaplain assistant know that their job is to protect me, to keep me from doing stupid things, to proofread the stuff that I send out. I run everything by my chaplain assistant now. Everything I write, everything I publish, not necessarily my sermons, but I invite them to come hear me preach and tell me how I'm doing from a soldier's perspective. And so that would be a great symbol for you to use when you sit down and do the initial counseling with them, is talk about the meaning of their insignia, what that means to them. And then let them know that you want them to succeed. You want them to get promoted, and you know, you got to feed them too as much as you want them to feed you. Thank you. We've touched upon a real poignant topic for me, and I just wanted to give my 2 bits on that. And I want you brethren to know I'm not anti-chaplain assistant. I hope I'm coming across as pro-chaplain assistant, and I hope we don't lose them, because right now I'm feeling keenly the absence of having one. I let my command secretary know she's doing a great job as my chaplain assistant pro tem. Thank you.
Good. Okay, we have another question.
Go ahead.
All right, Chatham Lewis, 2nd Battalion, 320th Field Artillery Regiment, 1st Brigade Combat Team, 101st Airborne, Air Assault, mouthful, I know. The question I have, and it's probably more to Chapman Colby, or even to anybody else here in the group, because what Chapman Bailey was talking about is something that I'm experiencing right now, this whole regionally aligned forces. Because we're not deploying whole units anymore, I have part of a battery, about 22 soldiers and 3 777s that are deploying. And the thing that's really weighing heavy on my heart is pretty much what he hit is, how do I ensure that the religious support happens to them? Because what happened in the previous deployment, when I was on Rear D, we pushed 4 chaplains forward, and I had an entire battery out there that never once saw a chaplain. None of the brothers that I sent down there ever once went to any of the firing points. And so my guys were left hanging. And so what's really hitting me hard is, how do I ensure that those 22 soldiers that I'm sending forward, plus part of a radar section, how do I ensure that they get the religious support that they're entitled to by the United States Code Title 10, but I can't ensure that it happens because I'm not going with them?
That's a very good question. The nature of being able to provide religious support, and you can't be there to do that for your soldiers. We do that also with family members that aren't in the battlefield with you, and yet we have a requirement to make sure that their religious needs are being met. It occurs to me that true leadership is making things happen when you're not around, and making things happen through other people. And so the dilemma is, and really the challenge is, how do we strengthen the people that we are expecting to do the work in our absence, whether it's another chaplain or a chaplain assistant, so that they reach out and actually provide the religious coverage that they're supposed to be doing. And yet if we don't follow up, sometimes we find that our soldiers fall through the cracks. So I think that would be the first point, is that we have to hold them accountable. They may be more rank than us, have higher rank, but we still need to be able to hold them accountable. That takes the art of engaging with them and letting them know what our expectation is. Possibly seeing our boss as well as their boss, to make sure that it's well known what the expectation is. The other idea is Chaplain Bailey has talked about a special operations model of providing religious support. Let me just, in a thumbnail sketch, outline what that is. That's basically dealing with a team of 12 people, right, that are going to go away for 4 to 6 months, anticipating no coverage, except if they happen to be on a fob or something. So what is happening is that there is a, one of the team members is designated and empowered to be the team. I don't think they're actually called chaplain, of course, but that team contact for religious support. We have lay leaders. We have, as you know, the distinctive faith group leaders, and I think there's a new term, so forgive me for not being current with that. But there's a way that we're able to call people to provide religious support in our absence. So these are some of the out-of-the-box thinking that we're being invited to consider, simply because we're going to have a more fluid battlefield. The regionally aligned forces just suggests that we're going to have people from our own units split. Maybe they're doing the security to Ebola victims in Africa, dealing with Ukraine, possibly also in dealing with ISIS. At the same time, the Pacific Rim may flare up with a natural disaster, and so you have to start thinking, how do I empower people and teams to minister to themselves when we're not there? So that takes some proactive, anticipatory work from ourselves. And I find it pretty exciting to think about it that way. All those stories we read about in the Book of Mormon, Ammon didn't expect that he was going to be the go-to guy. He was trying to empower other people to practice their religion and develop relationship with deity, so that when he was not there, they would continue in the way. So, okay, next. I think we can go on for another 5 minutes, and then we better switch to a little bit of administration. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chaplain Harrop with the Arizona National Guard. I was in a interesting position that I didn't anticipate a few months ago, where one of my company commanders was transitioning out while a new one came in, and I'd had very many religious conversations with him. He's an atheist guy, and we had kind of talked passively about when that time of change of command comes. One of the ceremonious rites of it is a prayer. And he had expressed some of his ideas that he doesn't necessarily like that a prayer is a part of that. What I guess I didn't foresee was that when we had the ceremony going on, they said, and now we'll hear a few words by the chaplain, rather than we're going to have an invocation by the chaplain. And it caught me off guard. I wasn't exactly sure how to respond to it. And so, at least in that regards, the battalion commander was there and asked me to pray. But that's one thing that I'm seeing, and I guess also anticipating, that as the increasing number of atheists and I guess strong atheists are in our commands, what do we do in a situation like that?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what did you do? So it appears that things worked out.
It worked out. My battalion commander was there, so I quickly whispered in his ear, what should I do? And he told me to pray. It was out of fear that I asked that, so I wish I could say I had a more bold response at that time.
That's great lessons that we're learning and then sharing with each other.
Chaplain Kirkman, Fort Carson, Colorado. If I may speak to that a little bit, I had an atheist commander who was outgoing, and the incoming commander said, well, it's his ceremony. And he didn't feel comfortable with the prayer. He wanted a moment of silence for the soldiers that we had lost. And I felt that it's my job to deal in the sacred. And so I asked if I might do that for him, and he was happy to let me do that. We did a moment of silence, and some very faithful people were impressed with that moment of silence. So I thought that was effective and helpful in that situation. And it definitely took into consideration the outgoing commander's opinion, and also dealt in something that was sacred for him. So keeping the chaplain relevant in that, however, not overstepping what was asked of me to do. So that's what we did.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And again, it's just, this is a time, let me kind of gear toward wrapping things up here. As you have heard from a commander and from Chaplain Bailey, I hope that you've been able to formulate in your mind maybe an enlarged vision of how we're going to provide religious support to a society that is really in flux. If we can go forward from here simply with the idea of dignity, to act in a state of dignity ourselves and extending that to those that we serve, I think we'll be miles ahead as we navigate some uncharted waters. Please.
Take the gum out of my mouth. I liked what Chaplain Bailey had to say about the sharing of resources. I know there are a lot of things that everybody here is doing in their units that might be beneficial for us in our units. And I don't know if there's something that we can do as an LDS 27, or I know there's a lot more of us than that, but we have a group called the LDS 27. So
It fluctuates, the numbers,
Yes.
doesn't it? Yeah.
But if we could create a way to share our resources, and I know that you got some stuff from me, and I think that all of that information would be beneficial, and I would appreciate your advice in helping me to continue in my career.
Right. Yes, we're working on an appropriate platform that would be a sort of a clearinghouse of not just good ideas, but lessons learned and resources to help you. Let me just let you know how appreciative I am. As Chaplain Helms and I confer, we're at a level in our careers that it's not about us anymore. We really want to know how we can empower each of you in your ministries. I'm very grateful that he's taken the initiative to do a scrapbook for us. At least have our photographs, and we know what each other looks like, and some of the emails. Just marvelous. We're going to be learning more about social media and how we can tap into that to use in our ministry. I anticipate that we'll be able to have it for our, taking care of our own internal betterment as our. We've talked about how, in a sense, we're a kind of a type of a quorum in the chaplaincy here in the church, and we simply want to follow those patterns that are eternal in nature so that we edify each other, that we are blessings truly to the Lord and a help in the Lord's hastening of his work. So, sir, I'd like to just invite you to say any last comments you might have at this point.
Again, I just want to thank you for this tremendous opportunity to be with you today. I've been uplifted by the sessions this morning, and I'm impressed with the challenges that you face, and wish you the very best in your stewardships. And I would just say, we've heard, I gained a lot from what Chaplain Bailey was sharing today, a lot of chaplain TTPs, I guess we would call them. But there's a principle behind every one of those techniques that he shared. And I think this business is much like parenting. What worked on kid number one doesn't work on kid number two. And so you have to constantly be, understanding the principle and just simply applying it differently based on your circumstances. But again, thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you very much, Commander. It's been a joy having you with us. I'd like to know if there's a report. I did hear of some that might be retiring. Chaplain Helms and I try to keep on track of that. But let's recognize those whose this may be the last time.
This, of course, is not for me, and it's perhaps more relevant for our Utah National Guard brothers, but it deserves the recognition of a Staff Sergeant Lane Parks, who's been serving as a 56 Mike for how many years? Galen, at least half of his career, has announced his retirement. He's an LDS brother he's in my battalion in Cedar City. If he's not the most, he's among the most deployed chaplain assistants we have in the state. And so he's announced his retirement for December. We'll be doing a retirement ceremony for his drill. So probably more relevant to the Utah National Guard folks, but I intend on getting something from our Corps for him. So I'd be open for some ideas and, of course, some contributions for that. It's well deserved for him. So.
Very good. Can we recognize anybody else that's planning that this will be their last time? We don't want to anticipate too much. Other than that, we expect each of you back next year, unless you're deployed. We also expect that in a very few minutes, you'll join us up at the ballroom for the luncheon that we'll have and some more speakers. Appreciate your attendance here today. It's just a wonderful spirit. I'm grateful to be a part of our brotherhood. Go in peace, but don't go to pieces.